Pistol-only runs are well known in the RE community for being notoriously difficult to complete. But in RE4 Remake, it's a whole different story. This game gives you access to multiple different handguns, each with their own advantages and disadvantages. But to continue and expand my Resident Evil pistol-only collection, I decided to make my life substantially and unreasonably harder than it should have to. There would be no grenades, no knives, and to top off this cake made out of gamer madness, we would only be using Leon's standard handgun, the SG-09R. Today's story would be one filled with action and adrenaline. It would be a story about the unbreakable bond between a man and his handgun, and the journey the two embarked on. After the tragedy Raccoon City represented for our protagonist Leon S. Kennedy, his soul hadn't been the only thing damaged by the outbreak. His bank account had suffered a similar fate. As he found out he had in fact not been paid during his time in the police station, presumably because he didn't clock in properly, and now, as per the court's ruling, was expected to cover the damages done to multiple assets during his stay there, which included the Nest's entire repair costs. He knew he had been robbed. It was clear that Umbrella was trying to silence him by drowning him in financial debt. So in order to get out of this predicament, he embarked on a mission that promised the financial freedom and safety he was looking for. His orders were to rescue the president's daughter, Ashley Graham. She had been presumed lost for a few weeks. Some thought she might have wandered off into the woods and got lost. That was until an anonymous tip proclaimed that she had been sighted in a village in Spain. The president proclaimed that Leon should investigate the village for further clues, and for that reason they offered him a salary worth the trouble. Normally he would be equipped with an array of weaponry, but due to them not giving a shit about our safety, all we were given was our used Raccoon City uniform, as well as having to take our own handgun on the mission. With our much beloved 09R in hand, we booked a ride to the village. Looking around an abandoned house, we see photos of Ashley. She was really being held hostage in the village. It seemed she was being kept inside of the local church. It was a long way there, but we would do what we had to in order to save her. Entering the village siege with our pistol's damage output pretty limited during the early stages of the game, there was no way we were taking down 15 villagers or even attempt to take down our chainsaw enthusiastic friend. All we could do is run around like a chicken, try not to eat an axe or by chance a chainsaw, and wait for the bingo session to interrupt the chase. Arriving at the windmill, being unable to stealthily take out enemies meant our approach would be more on the attention-grabbing side. Meaning other enemies in the area would run faster towards our current location than Dr. House, coming to the conclusion that it was not lupus. This wasn't too big of a deal right now, but would surely come to bite us in the leg later on. Entering an old cabin and jumping down a ladder, we find our favorite side character strapped in a sack. Initially, I thought he was just taking a cozy nap. But before we could ask him about what he was doing down here, a man only known as the Big Cheese comes to join the sleepover by putting us straight to bed. Waking up in an abandoned building, set on teaching us to perform stealth takedowns, we instead interpret another method of taking apart the enemies in here by using the traps made available to us. Cranking it, we run back to the door. We're on the way. Are you serious? Picking up the gear, we meet up with one of the most important contributors to our mission's success. Since we have no use for almost all the items made available to us, we instead just hand them over to the merchant to upgrade our baby and try to keep up with the enemies. Keeping up though is something we would not be doing in the Dynamite Valley, a place where people of all sorts came together with the sole goal of blowing you to smithereens.
Oh no!
This was the first roadblock. I died in pretty much every conceivable way possible. It might be the absolutely sober pathing I said on the day, or just my complete lack of spatial awareness. In any case, picking up the plate and heading to the valve, expecting to lose my life right then and there, somehow, this woman misses the easiest grab of her life, letting us leave with our limbs still in the right place and head towards the chief's mansion. Entering his private domicile without knocking quickly proved to have been a bad choice. Thinking it was over, he decides to momentarily spare us, dropping us to the ground. He said our blood had accepted a gift and that very soon, every day would be a sleepover we would have to participate in.
What?
I had literally no idea what this guy was talking about. All that was important right now is that we didn't get our necks snapped, and I was grateful for that. Leaving the mansion, opening the gate, we hear a faint whine behind us. It was the wolf. And as much as it hurt me for this playthrough, we couldn't save him, as it would only lead to a tankier boss fight later on. So we move. Okay, whatever. Eventually, we stumbled across the church. Euphoric, thinking our mission was finally over, we quickly realized we couldn't get in. It needed a very strange sort of key, which could only be found out on the lake. So entering the fishing village to pick up fuel needed for our 5-star ride, I very quickly realized that we probably weren't welcome here. Trying our best to not get hammered into the floor, using our surroundings as a lethal weapon, it turned out that entering the house containing the fuel was the easy part. The hard one was trying to fit through the freaking door. Eventually, with some minor inconveniences, we make it out of there. Feeling this sudden urge to take a nap on the boat, we have the strangest dream. It was just some dude in a robe asking us if we were enjoying our nap. He had this weird calming voice to him, but there was something wrong. I just couldn't quite put my finger on it. We find ourselves back awake at night. Realizing that my sleep schedule would definitely suffer from that prolonged nap, we stumble across an old shrine, which held the key to the church we were looking for. But of course, since we were in a Resident Evil game, we couldn't just take it. We first needed to find 2 different key items in the form of 2 shrine heads to unlock it. Because that's a very convenient way to join the local prayers, apparently. The first one was guarded by a small army. Fortunately, our supreme pathing saves us in this area, as after picking up the head, we dodge and run past every enemy that dares to stand in our way. But before we go for the second one, a small trip to Chicken Island grants us a few tasty raw eggs. Combining that with the many fish I had caught in the infected lake would guarantee us to get salmonella and by extension extreme food poisoning. The second head holds no threats, so picking it up, returning to the sigil, lets us grab it and return to the merchant, where before we start a fight we can't handle, we use almost all the items and treasures collected up to this point, pumping as many upgrades into our handgun as possible. Thinking the ammunition wouldn't be enough turned out to be the least of our problems, as we get completely fumbled throughout this fight. But eventually, with us running incredibly low on bullets, he finally crumbled. With our situation more dire than ever, I knew we would have to switch up our strategy to make it through the upcoming gauntlet. But for now, we enter the church. The good news were that we indeed find Ashley locked in a storage room, so now we could return and bring her to safety. The bad news though were, this was going to be the complete opposite of fun. Unable to perform any stealth takedowns meant we had to brute force our way through, which worked as well as you'd expect it to, resulting in us having to obliterate the majority of enemies anyways, further eating away at our resources. So heading over to the cabin to seek shelter, we meet someone completely unexpected. It was Louise, who, as it seemed, was inviting us to yet another sleepover, offering us bedtime stories and cookies. At this point, I was severely creeped out. Why did he and Mendes have such a strong desire to put me to sleep? It seemed we wouldn't get any answers to our questions just yet, as a horde of villagers crashed through the outside doors. And it was at this point our missing firepower came to show its side effects, as we face extreme troubles trying to fend off all the villagers storming the cabin, ending with us receiving a free lobotomy along the way. Trying to keep the crowd under control, we eventually managed to barricade all the windows. Defending the upstairs area though wasn't any easier, as they would just not leave us the fuck alone. But Luis and I were surprisingly holding on. Once the cow had joined to make things difficult, our handgun came to show its true strength, as we land critical hit after critical hit, leading to the cow losing its life in an instant, ending the section and letting us move on. But before Luis could try to sneak away, we stopped him. I told him I wanted answers. I wanted to know what this weird obsession was. He told me that if we really wanted to know the reason, we first had to do something for him. See, Luis was just as trapped in this village as we were. He had the knowledge on how to escape, but not the skills or means to do so. So he suggested working together to get all of us out of here. And once we were safe, we would get what we wanted. The thought of trying to get this guy out of the village wasn't a pleasant one, but we realized there was no other way. Before going, Luis told us that we should make our way towards the castle. Once there, he would tell us the full extent of his plan. Ashley just stood there, speechless. She didn't even know what the fuck was going on. This meant it was time for the Chainsaw Sisters. The only saving grace we had to our name was the insane crit chance we had. Practically every second shot stunned one of the sisters, allowing us to follow up with a kick for huge extra bits of damage. Doing so over and over again while dodging their chainsaws flying our general direction led to them being put down much quicker than I would have anticipated. And after all the turmoil was over, we were left with...
This is disgusting. This is awful in every way.
Oh, that's not good. Opening the door leading to the castle, we came to meet our old friend Mendes, who was very much determined to finish what he started.
I can't fucking compete!
So we make a run for it, deleting everyone standing in our way from existence. But it was all for nothing, as he uses his determination to catch up to us. We were cornered, and there was nowhere to run, and Mendes knew it. He told us that he would read us the best bedtime story we have ever heard. Okay, I've had enough of this. I've been creeped out enough by this guy. We were going to switch up the roles. It was time for us to put him to sleep. Permanently. Though it looked unlikely with that amount of ammunition, dodging his attacks lets us get some nice shots in, eventually knocking him to the ground. And it was at this point the unthinkable happened.
How? How? I don't know.
What the fuck? Listen, I knew the 09R did some solid crit damage, but this? The big cheese had just been converted to melted cheese. And surprisingly enough, the second phase was not much different. Avoiding some of the flying debris leads to him attempting some close combat action, which would very quickly turn out to have been his life's worst decision. Leaving the burning building with Mendes officially crossed off from our list of potential creeps, with Ashley now safe, we moved on towards the castle. Receiving a call from Luis, who congratulated us for surviving the big cheese, told us that we had to make our way to the clock tower, where he was preparing an escape route for us. Before asking whether we wanted gluten-free cookies or normal ones.
What?
Dude, what the fuck are you talking about? With the levels of weirdness steadily increasing, we take our trusty handgun and move on towards the castle's battlements, where...
I'm back in the fucking building again!
So, as I said, we move on towards the castle's battlements, where our first line of religious extremists was already waiting for us. It was also at this moment I was apparently suffering from an aneurysm, as I completely ignored the person trying not to set me on fire. This area would highly benefit from a calm and strategic approach, as there indeed was a method to this madness. Taking out the catapults and enemies from a safe distance is most important to our success, after which we can use the cannon made available to us to its full extent, opening the entrance in the friendliest way possible, and proceeding to aim it at all the bystanders right afterwards. Entering the castle, we are seemingly greeted by a child wearing a wig.
Brother,
I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that. What was wrong though was the fact he wanted to take Ashley away from us. I quickly explained that was not gonna happen. I needed her more than him. Without Ashley, I was never going to be freed from my debts, and I made it clear I was not willing to just trade her in for a couple of freshly baked churros. Though they looked appetizing, the exchange value felt like I was trying to sell a console at GameStop just to receive a $10 gift card. Not taking no for an answer, he instead sent some common shield guys to try and defeat us, which was a pathetic attempt as they go down in a few. That only meant the way was open for one of the most stroke-inducing sections of the game. The water hall, or how it's commonly referred to, the Ashley babysitting simulator, or alternatively the please just drown me already room. Needless to say, this wasn't a very pleasant experience. We were being bombarded left and right with arrows, while groups of bedsheet advertisers were trying to sell us materials we didn't need. We also somehow died in every way possible, whether it be killing Ashley by scratching her elbow, or having our heads ripped off by the plagas below, and everything in between that.
User disconnected from your channel.
And as if all that wasn't enough, our supply of bullets was starting to get smaller by the minute. We do eventually reach the second phase of this nightmare, which normally is not that difficult, but shit. It seemed the problems of our low-budget weaponry had finally caught up to us, as we stood there, helpless. And with no way of getting any more ammunition, it was essentially over, forcing us to restart the entire section in the hopes of conserving enough ammunition to make it past. So on retry, we do just that, trying to hit every headshot and kick possible, and once we returned, it was time to see if it had been enough. Phew. That was close. Finding ourselves one step closer to the clock tower, Ashley spontaneously decided that we should split up, as a gate separated us. I wasn't very content with the idea, as she was essentially my walking paycheck, but she seemed very convinced by her idea, by taking the lead, whilst we would have to make a quick detour. And it was here where all the useless pesetas we had lying around became useful, as we were granted accessibility to the bulletproof vest. The next thing on the menu was this zealot, holding a lamp we needed to progress. I honestly thought we would be in giant trouble here, but he left the picture just as quickly as he entered. He was never able to glory at the plagas. And it was at this point we met someone we never expected to ever see again. It was Ada. She was still alive? How? You fell like 1,000 feet into an exploding reactor. Are you related to Palpatine by any chance? Ada looked at us, slightly surprised, asking why we were still wearing our Raccoon City uniform, and most importantly, why we were still only carrying our handgun with us. She didn't even give me time to explain that my budget had just been cut, instead assuming that we were still clinging to the past, which I presume we still were. I mean, wearing this uniform does spark memories of the old times, but that didn't matter right now. We were on a mission to save the president's daughter, and that was it. Ada, smirking, already knew that wasn't all there was to it, but for now, she'd let it sit at that, and before I knew, she was already gone. With the subtle hopes of meeting her again, we move on. Meeting the new overcharged plagas to fulfill the trio of absolute dogshit, we are quickly overrun with hordes of enemies. I quickly realized that taking them all out just flat out wasn't an option anymore. We had to deploy the one other strategy still available to us. And that was to run for our freaking life. Or die trying. This felt like a horror movie. Being chased by these steroid-infused crackheads made me shit my pants. We thankfully made it out of there, closing the door behind us with our cheeks still mostly intact, and all of that only for this to happen. I swear, you cannot make this shit up. Thankfully, the last save wasn't very far. I hate this game sometimes. And after having recompleted the last 2 encounters once again, we this time take a safer approach, granting us a meeting with the armored El Gigante. But I gotta be honest, this guy posed literally no threat. The bigger one were the zealots trying to put their fingers in places they didn't belong. Fighting our way higher and higher while taking the cannon with us, our ginormous friend was disposed in a very humane way. It was only after this where we finally caught up to Ashley waiting for us near the castle's garden. But she was crying. Me, being quite socially awkward and not really knowing what to do in situations like this, just sat down next to her where she told me what was wrong. While waiting, she noticed something was off. She felt this sudden urge to take a nap. When she did, there was a man in a robe talking with her in her dreams, saying how soon she was going to be part of the friend group. But I knew something was horribly wrong. We needed to question Luis about this. But of course, as per the Resident Evil gods, at this very important point, the radio gave up on me. It seemed we were in a dead zone. There was no connection in this place, so we needed to continue, making our way to the clock tower instead. Unfortunately, escaping this labyrinth was the exact opposite of easy, as we needed to find 3 levers to open the giant steel gate. Much to our despair, this area was bloated with parasite-infested dogs, trying to rip our throat out. Ashley wasn't being much of a help either, trying to literally get herself expelled from this world by running into our line of sight. With the passage open, we were now required to complete yet another set of 3, in the form of the golden animal heads? What are these safety mechanisms?
I mean, the answer to that is, I don't know.
The fuck you say to me?
Starting with the area I believe to be least stroke-inducing, the knights were a new threat, which was thankfully pretty easily countered by our pistol's crit damage. That though doesn't mean we didn't receive multiple slashes to our throat, eating away at our health items and body armor. But it was at this point the true challenge of the section came to show. The gallery was one of the worst places the castle had to offer. Not only because the drawings were shit, but also because literally everything here was set on decapitating us.
Out my way, son! Door stuck! Door stuck!
Enemies were just spammed left and right. We had no way to block or counter any of the incoming attacks, which definitely did not make things easier. Add on the fact that we also had to protect Ashley and not shoot her. And you had the recipe for a beautiful stun-lock insta-kill fest. But in all honesty, I had no idea how we were supposed to get out of here. There were just loads and loads of enemies in the arena, and when I thought I had taken out most of them, another wave appeared from God knows where. There was no strategy. We just shoot at what is closest to us, kick when available, and hope that the red zealot doesn't give us a headache. And so, death after death after death after whatever the fuck this was. It was safe to say I was starting to lose it, so I had to come up with a new plan to get this over with. I quickly realized that the core of the problem in here, surprisingly, weren't even the normal zealots bombarding us. Though annoying, the real threat was standing up there,
Hamburger, cheeseburger, Big Mac, Whopper,
looking down on us and transforming this place into Mordor, using the bare minimum amount of time to deal with the threats on our level. By shooting at him while he's trying to Gloria his plaga interrupts his animation, saving us the trouble of being decapitated once again. Eventually, he succumbs to his wounds, letting us take the nuisances out in peace. This took way too goddamn long. But as a reward, we received the last needed golden animal head. Placing the 3 in their rightful place unlocks literally 1 door. So yeah, that wasn't worth the trouble. And it was double not worth the trouble as we get trapped in a cage and have to watch as our paycheck slips out of our pockets. Alright, that's it. I've had it up to here with this girl getting kidnapped. This was the only shot at a good future I had. I couldn't let it go to waste, and I was going to chase her across the planet if I had to. Freed from our restraints, we receive a call from... Ada? Ada told us there was no time for small talk. She still had some important things that needed to be taken care of. But she did tell us she saw Ashley, telling us that she was being dragged into the throne room, which was not far from here, so we could still save her. This was surprisingly nice from her, considering I both metaphorically and literally dropped her back in Raccoon City for my handgun. So why would she help me? But before we could ask, she hung up, leaving us to handle the rest ourselves. Arriving in the Novistador's home base like the home invasionist we had already proven to be. Stepping on a stick leads to the entire nest waking up. Faced with no other option but to play the exterminator, a few shots are enough to take one of the bugs out, repeating the process again and again. And a kill streak of 30 later, this place was looking awfully quiet. But the next area was one I had been fearing for a long time now. It was the double Garrador room. Entering, I immediately realized I had made a terrible mistake. I forgot to repair my armor, and by extension, to save the game. That might be a problem. Oh yeah. Well, at least I got to see Leon freaking T-posing on the ground.
What the hell?
Once we made it back, it was time to take a more serious approach. See, the Garradors really do not care what they get in between their claws. They don't differentiate between male, female, enemy or friend. So by positioning a potential victim in between us and the Garrador, a shot is enough for them to beeline towards us like we were trying to buy the last TV at the super sale, leading to an unwilling contender being ripped in half before our very eyes. Further applying this strategy meant that eventually it was only me and the Garradors left. They stood no chance at that point anymore. Moving on and entering the throne room as we see Ashley. But before we could do anything to save her, we get jumped and thrown down a pit, barely surviving by holding onto a chain. Going on forward, something felt wrong. It was like that time on the boat. I was feeling fatigued and overwhelmingly sleepy. And it was getting worse. What was going on? Moving through some workway tunnels, we find an elevator. Turning on its power, we are met by the asshole that threw us down the hole. And even though I wanted to get my revenge and send this fucker to the afterlife, sadly, we simply didn't have the means to do so, which meant we had to wait for the god-awfully slow elevator to arrive.
How long is this going to take?
There was a positive to all of this though. The tunnels were filled with ammunition we could take with us to prepare for the upcoming encounters. And once it did arrive, we swiftly ended our admittedly very violent playdate with the Verdugo to end the chapter with a huge boost to our inventory's current situation. But as we were peacefully listening to some, Muzak, we seemed to be getting another one of our episodes, feeling a fatigue worse than ever before, followed by visions of the same man we had met in our dream on the boat. He told me that it was already too late, that the parasite was already taking hold of our body and mind, and that very soon we would follow his will. I could only assume the worst, but just before I fell asleep, Luis appeared, claiming he could delay my fate and perhaps even help me escape it. After Luis had given us a shot and I had physically caught myself again, he said he had just given us a local anesthetic, temporarily putting the parasite in our body to sleep. While thankful, I told him I finally wanted the answers he had promised. I needed to know what was happening, why everyone, including him, was behaving like this, and what parasite he was talking about. He reluctantly agreed. It was finally time to reveal the truth. The reason everyone was like this was because a man named Osmund Saddler had taken control of their minds with the help of a parasite named Las Plagas. He was the reason everyone wanted to put us to sleep. It wasn't their decision, but the only reason Luis wasn't trying to do the same thing was because he had surgically removed the parasite from his body. And while he mostly had a free will, some of Saddler's ideals were still deeply engraved in his mind and had become part of his personality. The only way for us and Ashley to escape from this fate was to make our way to a secret lab to remove them as well. And with the truth now finally spoken, he said he was going to do everything he could to get me and Ashley out of here. With Luis on our side, we entered the mines, where enemies were plentiful, chainsaws welcome, and people way too touchy for our own good. Inside the building, trying to pull a lever with a chainsaw ref behind me, opening the door downstairs, thinking I was safe, I was quickly proven otherwise. This trend of having my spine reconstructed continued, partly due to my own greed, but eventually, in what I could only describe as the most undeserved win possible, we escaped the madness with a fresh new haircut to our name. Now facing off with the double El Gigantes, there honestly wasn't much to say here. The first one just got completely obliterated by our handgun's crit damage, after which we dropped down the other one, above a literal lava pit, making him do the meme. Taking another elevator, nearing the surface, we have to watch in absolute horror as Luis gets Among Us stabbed right in front of us by our old friend Krauser, who, as you probably already know, does not allow us to fight with our pistol. So yeah, we sadly had to make an exception and use the knife here. But let's be real, since you clicked on the video and made it this far, you probably already expected this. But to make things a little harder for me, I at least decided to use these weak-ass kitchen knives. After having wasted multiple heals and being knocked to the ground, we were saved by Luis in the last second. Using the rest of his willpower to light up a cigarette, he asked us if people could really change. Even when under the control of Saddler, he tried his best to spare us from the fate he had to suffer. He had always tried his best, but was it enough? And I told him that in my eyes, now, he was more than the creep I had made him out to be. He had truly proven himself to be a hero, and I wanted him to know that whilst maybe not everyone could change, he damn well was able to, and that he should be proud of that. And in the last seconds of his life, he looked at me, deeply moved by our words, before closing his eyes and going to sleep with the feeling of fulfillment. Now out for revenge on the death of our friend, we receive another call from Ada, who tells us that Ashley was being dragged to the clock tower, which was coincidentally the place Luis stated to have set up our escape. This is where shit got real. Nothing about this section was easy. There were cultists everywhere, ready to end our attempt in an instant. Whether it be by getting our eyes pressed into the wrong direction, or being stun-locked until we looked like cooked chicken, everything was on the table. But the elevator ride was where everything fell apart. I felt powerless. Our handgun was seriously struggling to keep up, and it was showing. The only thing we had going for us was that the enemy spawns were completely scripted, allowing us to try our best and predict their movement, often to minimal success. Keeping the enemies away and taking the red zealot out as quickly as possible, eventually let us reach the top with... Oh shit! That's horrible. It was at this moment I was looking at my ammo count and was starting to reinforce the thought of making our way back down in our own fashion. But with the only other direction left being forwards, we entered the next room only to see Ashley being taken away by Krauser in front of our very eyes. And the only thing standing between me and her was... Well, that was easy. Of course. More unprepared than ever to fight a boss, this one would quickly give me a headache as our bullets ran out almost immediately, forcing me to already loot the arena's resources. They were enough to drop him to the ground and deal substantial damage, but with our body armor broken and our heals used up, all it took was one laser of shit coming our direction to send us to the afterlife. But on retry, I started to notice something. Once again, our ammo was on an all-time low, but I was starting to see random drops of ammunition on the ground. This was more than strange, as there were no crates anywhere near. Well, as it turned out, the game got our back. It seemed to notice how dire our situation was, and forced Salazar's little acid bubbles to supply us with bullets, should we run out. This was more than huge, because it meant it was only a matter of time until we won. I would have liked to finish the fight with more than 0 bullets, but I guess you can't have everything. Seeing Krauser taking Ashley to another island, we followed suit as the speedboat Luz had set up came in clutch. Before driving away, we stumbled across Ada, who asked us if we could give her a ride, and I think at this point I was kinda owing it to her, as without her help, we wouldn't have made it this far in the first place. On the way to the island, I had to ask Ada, why was she still helping me? I mean, I literally rejected her back in RE2 for my pistol. Even though I had grown and learned to trust others since, there was no reason for her to help me after that. She just smirked at me, saying that even with our hyperfixation on our gun, we were still a good person, trying to make the world better, and that if we had really moved on, it was worth her while to try and help us. Oh, and she's gone. Arriving at the island, ready to finally rescue Ashley, we are met by a literal army guarding the following door. This time, a calm and strategic approach was the worst thing we could do, quickly leading to us being sent back to the lobby. Attempting a more fast-paced approach this time, to everyone's surprise, actually worked out. The guards didn't even really get time to try and hit us, and so we further abused the threat, eating a rocket on the way, somehow not painting the walls in tomato soup, and sprinting past literally everything standing in our way for the next 5 minutes, leading us to the regenerator lab. Great. Turning on the building's power and picking up a keycard, we are met with what I could only describe as a middle-aged Karen trying to tell us that this was her private property, which we were not allowed on. Which, you know, she was right, but I didn't really give a shit. So we made it to the quadruple generators, where our goal was to figure out which generator was holding the wrench we needed. Now you might think we were screwed here, because we couldn't equip the biosensor scope to a handgun. I could try to blindly pick one of the 4 and blindly try to hit their weak spots. But with the current ammo situation, this was next to impossible. So we would have to bend, not break, but bend the rules just a little bit. Buying the rifle from the store and equipping the scope, we exclusively use it to locate the wrench and the weak spots, but not actually using it to shoot the generator with it. In my eyes, this wasn't technically breaking the rules, but if you want to say I failed, then go ahead, break my heart. But with us now able to actually see where to shoot, we kinda ran out of bullets. So yeah, let's try that again. Using the same strat, we do barely make it, leaving us with a measly 12 bullets, but that didn't matter as we finally stumbled across Ashley locked in a cell. She was still alive and doing relatively well. There was still a chance for us to escape this nightmare. Taking her with us, some minor accidents later, we reached the Wrecking Ball arena, where Ashley takes control of the machinery in order to break the wall. Now, as some of you may already know, this wall has a health bar, and you might also know that by throwing grenades at it you can speed up the process of breaking it. But what you may not know is that you don't necessarily need grenades. In fact, every weapon can damage it, including our pistol. And so, using the few bullets we still had, we shoot away at it, eventually seeing the results as the wall began to deform. From here it was just surviving until Ashley finished the job, giving us time to pick up all the resources remaining in the arena and for some reason transform us into Super Mario. Taking the elevator up,
Ashley!
we ran into someone who we knew we would inevitably come across. It was Saddler, accompanied by 2 bedsheet followers. He was here to claim what we had stolen. He wanted Ashley back to finish her transformation into a servant. But he said he had bigger plans for us. Soon, the Plaga would take over, and we would be promoted to the head storyteller of the cult. I don't know what made this guy think I could tell good stories, but in his mind, our fate was set in stone, and I was starting to think the same. But we couldn't stop now. It was either die here by doing nothing, or take the chance of saving myself and Ashley. But there was someone else still standing in our way. It was Krauser. He was already expecting us, and would not let us go on, not without one of us dying. If that's how it had to be, then I would not shy away. But there was another problem plaguing our experience in this fight. We quite literally had no way of avoiding or countering Krauser's knife attacks, transforming us into a living pincushion for him to stab as often as he wanted. All we could do was try and deal as much damage as possible and heal through the barrage of damage we were entitled to get. And this only got worse once we faced him in his final form.
That's the difference between you and me, Rookie.
This fight was the closest I would get to receiving an aneurysm. We literally have to play this fight out perfect to be able to win. With only a few heals and bullets remaining, it wasn't uncommon to just find myself out of bullets, but the technical execution was something else. There was only one path to victory. Since we couldn't block any of the incoming attacks, we would have to follow a specific route to try and avoid taking damage, perfectly timing our jumps and climbs to not get our animation cancelled. Furthermore, there were only 2 scenarios where we could try to inflict damage. One was when he was jumping to the second platform, and the other was to shoot at his legs when he was shielding his body, potentially resulting in a stun. This fight was daunting. If I didn't get my head crushed or cut off, I just ran out of ammunition, forcing me to redo the 10 minutes leading up to it. But eventually, after a 10-minute fight, with us hitting almost every shot possible, it finally happened. Krauser was defeated, and now all that was left was to give him the final blow, the coup de grace. With the path cleared, we were making our way towards the last few encounters of the game. What followed was a gauntlet of enemies, with our only help being Mike, who was doing an admittedly good job at reducing the masses, but in the next area we had to take out the anti-aircraft gun, while enemies were storming in from all sides. Keeping our distance to take everything out safely, we somehow always kept ourselves left with some ammunition to keep going. We interrupt the guys sitting on the turret, making our way to the top to use our rare boost in firepower to take everything remaining out. The same could be said for the third part of the gauntlet. A calm approach was all that was needed in order to survive. Once everything was quiet again, we turned the levers, taking out the waves that followed with the turrets, letting us move to the temple, where after we witness a statue receiving a cockshot, we find Ashley, unconsciously laying in the middle of the altar. I didn't know if we were too late, but we had to save her. Just as we wanted to pick her up, Saddler appeared once again, and I suddenly couldn't move anymore. It was the Plaga. The shot had lost its effectiveness, and there was nothing we could do. And as we were about to lose everything, Ada came in clutch, distracting Saddler long enough for us to grab the girl and run away, where we eventually stumbled across the secret lab. Using our last bit of strength, we put Ashley on the chair and removed the parasite. But then, the overwhelming tiredness got to us, and we fell asleep for the last time. Or so we thought. Ashley, being the giga chat she is, had removed our parasite as well, saving us from our fate, and that meant only one thing now, that we were freed from our restraints. It was time to bring the big bad himself down. The last thing on our to-do list was to defeat Saddler. This was coincidentally also the hardest fight of the game, requiring pinpoint accuracy and extremely efficient resource management. 2 attacks were already enough to delete our body armor from existence, and a third one would put us on extremely low health. Much to our despair, the legs were also incredibly tanky, seeming to not be taking any crit damage at all, and tanking up to 10 bullets before popping. Once he did fall, we were given time to put as many bullets into his face as possible. Wanna guess how often I had to repeat this process? 4 times! This took ages. If I didn't get my ass glued to the wall, it was the ammo that would run out before his health bar did. It took me hours upon hours of attempts, but eventually we got the perfect attempt. And with Ada dropping the rocket launcher, it was finally over.
I'll give you a holy body.
And with Saddler ironically put to sleep, it was time for us to escape from this goddamn island. Furthermore, Ada told us that there was a jet ski for us to escape with, and as she flew off, she promised we would meet her again. It was time for our final escape. With all the enemies going docile, we get on the jet ski and cruise through the collapsing island, and with the timer running lower and lower, we had made it. We had completed our mission. We would finally be freed from our financial restraints, and we would finally be able to move on. With Ashley celebrating our victory, we couldn't forget the losses we suffered along the journey. Luis gave his life so we could escape, and as we rode off into the sunset, for the first time in a long while, we felt at peace. We had done the unthinkable.